There are moments in Hollywood that stop time. Moments when the laughter, the flashing lights, and the constant motion of fame fall completely silent. On October 11, 2025, that silence arrived with a wave of disbelief. Diane Keaton, the Oscar-winning actress who redefined charm, style, and independence, was gone. The news spread like wildfire, but the details were strangely thin. Her family confirmed her passing at 79 years old in California and asked only for privacy. No cause of death was released, no medical statements, no drawn-out farewell. For the millions who had grown up watching her, the quirky smile, the offbeat humor, the strength hiding behind those wide-brimmed hats, it didn't feel real. How could a woman who seemed unstoppable simply vanish so quietly? In the first few hours, reporters scrambled for answers. TMZ, People, Variety. Every outlet repeated the same phrase: a sudden decline in health. Friends were shocked. Some had seen her just weeks earlier. One longtime friend, songwriter Carol Bayer-Sager, told people that Diane had looked very thin and that she seemed fragile but never complained. She didn't want to worry anyone, Sager said. That line, "she didn't want to worry anyone," spread across social media. It captured everything people loved about Diane: the dignity, the humor, the self-control. Even as her health failed, she had chosen silence over spectacle. But what had really happened in those final months? Reports suggest that Diane had begun withdrawing from public life during the summer. Once known for her appearances at art shows and charity events, she stopped attending almost overnight. She sold her beloved Los Angeles home, the same one she'd once called her creative sanctuary, and began spending more time in quiet spaces, painting and writing. Close friends noticed she no longer answered calls promptly. Invitations went unanswered. It was as if she were slowly preparing for a goodbye no one else knew was coming. Those who saw her in her final weeks described her as calm but distant, still sharp, still funny, but physically weaker. She'd lost significant weight and her energy seemed to fade. Yet she never admitted to being ill. People who knew her best now believe that whatever was happening, whether it was a private illness or natural decline, Diane didn't want the world to see it. She had spent her life controlling her narrative, and she wasn't about to surrender that control now. Diane's relationship with her two adopted children, Dexter and Duke, remained the most important part of her private world. Friends say that in her final week she spent quiet evenings with them at home, sharing dinner and reminiscing about their favorite family trips. There are reports, though unconfirmed, that she told them she felt grateful and at peace. Her family has released almost nothing since, and that privacy seems to honor her wishes. For an actress who spent 50 years under the public gaze, Diane managed to make her exit invisible, and somehow, that made it feel even more powerful. To understand Diane's last days, we have to look at her entire journey. She was never the typical Hollywood star. In the 1970s, she became a household name through The Godfather and Annie Hall, films that reshaped American cinema. Her style, the oversized suits, the hats, the unapologetic weirdness, made her an icon. But fame never seemed to consume her. She loved acting, but she never loved the noise that came with it. In interviews, she often joked about her anxiety and introversion, saying, "I'm not good at being famous, I'm good at pretending." That humility made her beloved not just as an actress, but as a person who somehow stayed human in an industry built on ego. Still, behind that charisma was a woman who lived on her own terms. Diane Keaton never married, a decision that baffled many fans but made perfect sense to her. Over the years, she had relationships with some of Hollywood's biggest names: Woody Allen, Warren Beatty, and Al Pacino. Her chemistry with Pacino during The Godfather was legendary, and for years people believed they would end up together. But Diane later admitted that she gave him an ultimatum: marriage or goodbye. And when he hesitated, she walked away. Years later, she told an interviewer, "I didn't really want a man I could have." That one line defined her spirit: independent, ironic, and quietly rebellious. For Diane, marriage was never the dream. She said she admired love but didn't see herself fitting into its traditions. Instead, she became a mother in her 50s, adopting 2 children and building her own version of family. That choice, like so many others, made her stand apart in Hollywood. She didn't need the validation of a wedding ring or a red carpet partner. Her life was her art, and her art was her legacy. As she aged, Diane embraced her eccentricity. She became a fashion icon for refusing to age gracefully by Hollywood's rigid standards. She wore what she wanted, tailored suits, bowler hats, and sneakers, even on magazine covers. She joked about plastic surgery, saying she was too scared to try it. Her interviews were unpredictable, full of tangents, jokes, and sudden bursts of sincerity. Fans loved that she seemed to exist in her own world, a place where creativity and chaos lived side by side. But in the last year of her life, that creative energy dimmed. Close friends noticed she wasn't posting much on social media, skipping interviews and events she would usually attend. When asked, she brushed it off with humor, saying she was just tired of talking. Those who knew her best now believe that fatigue may have been literal. Some reports hinted that she had been struggling with a recurring illness, possibly cancer, though nothing has been confirmed. Others believe it may have been complications related to age or organ failure. Whatever the case, Diane faced it privately, without fanfare. Her week-by-week behavior in those final months paints a quiet but emotional picture. Early in September, she was seen at a small art exhibition in Beverly Hills, her last known public appearance. Witnesses said she looked frail but radiant, smiling politely before leaving early. A week later, she stopped taking new projects and told her management team she needed a break. Another week passed, and she was rarely seen outside her home. By early October, her closest friends described her as peaceful, reflective, even spiritual. They say she spoke often about gratitude, about the joy of having lived exactly the life she wanted. For a woman who once battled inner demons, that peace was hard-earned. In her memoir, Then Again, Diane had opened up about her struggles with bulimia as a young actress, a disorder she fought for years in silence. She said therapy and art helped her heal, and she wanted others to know that recovery was possible. That honesty, decades before such topics were common, made her even more respected. She had turned vulnerability into strength, long before it was fashionable. Rumors about Diane's health began circulating a few weeks before her death. Paparazzi photos showed her looking thinner than usual, but fans dismissed them as exaggerated tabloid gossip. After all, this was Diane Keaton, the woman who had outlived trends, criticism, and every attempt to label her. But behind closed doors, friends later revealed that her condition was indeed serious. Whether it was cancer, organ failure, or something entirely different, no one outside her family knows for sure. And that mystery, that decision to keep her truth private, became the final act of defiance in a life built on self-ownership. When the news broke, tributes flooded in. Goldie Hawn called her the bravest woman I ever knew. Bette Midler wrote, "She taught us how to age with attitude." Al Pacino, visibly shaken, told reporters, "She was my equal, my friend, my heart." For millions of fans, her death wasn't just the loss of an actress, it was the end of an era. Diane Keaton represented authenticity in a world addicted to illusion. She was proof that a woman could be powerful without being perfect, private without being cold, funny without being cruel. Her funeral was a small, private ceremony attended only by family and close friends. No paparazzi, no red carpet, no televised tribute. Just quiet music, flowers, and the people who truly knew her. That simplicity, in a way, was the most Diane Keaton thing imaginable, understated, graceful, and utterly her own. In the weeks that followed, fans revisited her old interviews and realized how often she had foreshadowed her exit. She once said, "I want to leave before the world tells me to." Another time she mused, "When I go, I want people to talk about the art, not the end." And that's exactly what happened. Her passing sparked not only grief but gratitude for the decades of laughter, honesty, and courage she gave. Today, Diane Keaton's films still play on streaming platforms, her quotes still fill social media posts, and her style continues to influence generations of artists. But her true legacy isn't just in the movies, it's in the way she lived. She showed that individuality is the purest form of beauty, that humor can be armor, and that growing older isn't something to hide from but to celebrate. In the end, Diane Keaton didn't just act in great stories, she was one. A story about freedom, vulnerability, and grace under pressure. A story about a woman who refused to be defined by others and instead defined herself. She lived loudly when she wanted, quietly when she needed, and left this world exactly the way she lived in it. Authentically, elegantly, and completely on her own terms. And maybe that's the real lesson of Diane Keaton's life. That legacy isn't built by noise or headlines, but by the courage to be yourself, even when no one else understands it.